We'll just do this. There's only 2 questions. I just want to get a feel for, think about your digital strategy from an employee's perspective. I've tried to make it feel like my personal experience. Is your employee experience like Amazon? Is it seamless? Is it digital? Is the strategy? Is it like John Lewis, which I think is a superb example of where you have both experiences equally well delivered? Is it like Domino's? I hope I'm not going to offend anyone from Domino's, but Domino's appear to have overlaid a very good digital infrastructure onto something that they haven't changed. It's still the same old proposition. Or is it a bit like Woolworths before the very rework, where there wasn't much of a digital connection and it was just seen to be doing a website? So if you can let me know which of those 4 you think you are from an employee perspective. Brilliant. Oh. So 6% feel that it's fully integrated into the business like Amazon would be, and that's a pretty equal split. But 1 in 3 saying it's not really good at all. Now let's think of it from the other perspective. Thank you. So the next question is about your organization. So again, is the back office completely integrated into the front office? It's seamless. Do you have all of the digital things in place, but you haven't worked out how to make them talk to each other yet? Is there a bit of digital, or is it manual, or is it not there yet at all? So actually we've got a greater split into the more manual. 2 out of 3 of you haven't been able to implement that in the back office. Thanks for that. When you overlay those 2 bits of insight into a view, if you take Forrester's digital model, what you've just done, and this was a pre-prepared slide, so I didn't know what the answer was going to be, but when I've done this before, most organizations on average in the room tend to be here. And I think what we saw is we're maybe even a little further left. But certainly from an employee experience perspective, that is reflective. Less than 10% are basing that around there. And actually the same perspective from digital. So there is a very obvious disconnect between what we heard and the aspirations of businesses and what's actually happening. And Forrester also try to understand why that's the case. And these are the 2 numbers that make me sit up and listen. So 3/4 of executives, SMT members, senior management, are very clear the digital strategy is in place. We've just said that it's not really. But actually the same organizations, 15% of them have the skills and the capability to allow them to execute on that. So there is very clearly a disparity between the 2. That's really all I want to talk about in terms of digital strategy. Other than that, there is a disconnect from the point of view of the employee. And I've just tried to explain one of our employees the kind of things that we are now asking them to buy into from a digital point of view. These are all the different things that our employees have access to. And the way we want them to do this, because we are a digitally focused organization, is through digital. So we ask them to go into the internet to look at company news. We ask them to access their EAP. We want to put their pay slips through here. We want them to book car parking, time off, appraisals. We're asking them to do more and more and more and more. And we haven't really thought about the architecture from the employee's point of view, because that means lots of different things. And every time you acquire another thing, because there'll be some fun, I promise you, there'll be some amazing products and services that you're going to see and be presented to today. And then you're going to acquire it, you're going to go back, you're going to pitch it into the business, and they're going to say, yeah, go ahead, buy it. And then that might even exacerbate the problem. And of course, what happens then is that you don't get participation. And we'll talk a little bit more about participation in a second. But that's the reality of the situation. So let's look forward a year or 2, because there's probably going to be a few more. And it could be, these are the things that I know about that we offer. There's about 65 things that we could help you with as an organization. And it just gets more and more complicated. Financial wellness, EAPs, dental cover, we're asking our employees, we're providing more and more benefits and programs to our employees. Staff surveys, we spent a lot of time on our round table talking about surveys. There's going to be more of a requirement for data coming in. So we're going to be giving even more things to an employee. And we're going to expect them to interact with them. So how are we going to do that? And I think the big insight, again, I had Paul who was formerly at 3. I'm not sure if Paul's in the room, but Paul was talking about his experience at 3. When we were talking about the challenges in getting staff surveys embedded, he simply pulled out his mobile phone and said, that's how we do it. Now, of course, he was a bit biased because he used to work for a phone company, so I'm guessing they would have a pretty high level of participation through mobile. But by putting the interface, by designing an employee journey, your digital experience becomes completely different. It'll force you to think about a single point of access. It will mean that you set yourself a parameter. Nothing that I offer my employee can be more than 3 taps away. And you start to spend more time in the design of the employee experience and then work out how to do it digitally than the other way around. And I think that's the big insight from designing a strategy from the employee's point of view. It's as I say, the majority of the products and services, and there's some fantastic new services that are being launched in the industry at the moment, they want to use a digital connection. So I think our job is to focus on the employee experience through the employee's point of view. Now, in the old days, that would have put the fear of God into pretty much everyone in the organisation, because you're going to go and now ask for stuff. You're going to go and ask for money. You're going to go and ask for resource. You're going to go and speak to your IT people, who are going to have a long development list and talk about in the middle of 2019 when you can get some development resource and all that stuff. And you have to go and buy stuff. You have to buy all the hardware, all the infrastructure, all the servers, all that stuff. So that's what it used to be like. But the world changed, and 10 years ago it changed quite significantly when Apple released the iPhone. And there's an unintended consequence of what Apple did in 2007. I remember when it came out. I remember friends sending a message and it would have on the bottom, sent from my iPhone. They would deliberately send emails that didn't have any content in, just to let you know that they had an iPhone. But since then, the world has completely changed. And it's changed because that's the NFL at Wembley. Everyone's got one. I was at Twickenham on Saturday. They all started to put their lights up, right? Everyone's got one. And that's the insight. There's Leon, who's the director of surface transport at TfL, spoke at an event I was at on Tuesday. They did some insights into bus users in London. 91% of people who use London buses have a smartphone. So what percentage of your organisation is going to have a smartphone? So the biggest hurdle in implementing successful communications programs is already in place. The skill is to harness it. And we now need to think about our employees as consumers. And this is brilliant, right? So I won't ask for hands because it can get a bit embarrassing. But who are the 1 in 3 of you who check your smartphone in the middle of the night? I live with one of them. Who checks it within 5 minutes of waking up? Yeah. Oh, God, that's more than 2 in 3, right? Who uses it whilst having supper with the family? 2 out of 3. I mean, how could you do that? You start having a nice family dinner, and out comes the phone to check emails. Right, I do that as well. And just before you go to bed, last thing you do at night, right? Just make sure you haven't missed anything at all. Let's just make sure we check that. So the whole point here is this is how we live our lives. Depending on which survey you want to take, you could spend between 3 and 5 hours a day on this little thing. And it's the remote control for life, right? When you're on your phone, it's a very different experience to browsing. When you're browsing on a desktop, you tend to use the internet a lot. When you're on a phone, it tends to be app-orientated. Over 90% of the time will be in an app. You go in, you know what you want to do, you access it, it's presented in the right format, the right way, and away you go and do something else. And that's a really important insight when it comes to working out how you're going to deploy technology. You don't have to worry about the hardware, you've got to worry about how you're going to get buy-in to it. Because to get to the point where you want to get to, you've got to start right at the very beginning. So the first thing that I hear when we talk about engagement programs with our clients is, well, actually most people don't actually know that we offer that. So you've got to start with awareness. And awareness can be, it's quite an effort to try and explain to your organization that you've just invested in a new HRS or a L&D platform. It's a lot of work. But without awareness, they can't understand it. They can't understand what an EAP does. They don't understand the intricacies of a salary sacrifice program or a TRS. So without understanding, you can't get participation. That's where you want to get to. Because when you get participation, you start to have an impact. And positive impacts drive the circle because they will become advocates for you internally. So that is how using technology can help you with your overall engagement programs, because it's a virtuous circle. In September, I was driving into work and David Kershaw was giving an interview on the Today programme about the results that M&C Saatchi had. And he's a very interesting guy if you ever hear him talk, and I'm interested in what's happening in advertising. It's completely, the whole industry is on its head in terms of the spend between online and offline, digital and non-digital. And he just said a phrase, which that's how he's thinking. So when we're talking about a digital strategy, actually, and Paul helped me on the round table, we're actually talking about a mobile strategy. And it's not just David, it's starting to become synonymous with digital. If you're looking at sub-Saharan Africa, they don't have a computer infrastructure. Their banking infrastructure is completely done through a mobile phone. So mobile becomes the solution. And it's about harnessing how we're going to do that, how we're going to take that insight into how we're going to change our engagement programs. And I couldn't end the presentation without talking about data. So this is an example of how the data analysis and the insights that we heard about earlier can actually become directly affected by having a mobile-first engagement strategy. This is data that relates to our one of the products that we help clients with is an employee assistance program. You all know, you may have experience of EAPs. They're a good thing, right? If anyone's had personal trauma or needed some support, they're a fantastic added value product into an employee proposition. And this is our entire base. This is a few 100,000 people. And you'll see that, interestingly for us, and we are slightly different to others, is that we have slightly more male than female people who use the EAP. We also see when people call, and we see that there's some people calling 10, 11, 12, midnight, even through the middle of the night. More at weekends. So that's information, right? It's data. We haven't done anything with it yet. So we then go into individual clients. And in this particular client, we had 22% of the respondents were male, 7% female, so it's slightly different to the norm. But that's when the calls are made between night and day. And when you compared that to client number 2, we saw that there was a considerably higher number of male respondees, but they were responding, they were actually 4 times more likely to contact at night. So trying to work out why is that, and how can we use that insight that males appear to be the propensity for them to call at night is higher. And then you think about mobile, and you think about putting EAP onto your engagement app. How's that going to appeal to most? Well, it actually appeals to folk like me, slightly older males, who would rather do that in the comfort of my own study at 11 o'clock at night with no one around, certainly not my HR function, certainly not my wife or kids, and do it in my own time. So we're starting now to understand that we can gain those insights. Is that going to help shape our overall employee digital strategy? And to pull it full circle, I think what we're ending up with in our industry is consumer level experiences. There's going to become less distinction. In our round table, we had a bit of a chat about this because we had one half of the table who said, well, my employee wants my work to be work and my home to be home. And we had another half of the table saying, well, actually, it's all one and the same. So I'll let you be the judge on it, because I put my Volkswagen in for a service last month, and an hour and a half after I checked it in, I got a video of the underbody safety check, and I could access it through my Volkswagen app. I thought that was pretty cool. Think about, again, transformational stuff, right? I've got they're telling me it needs this amount of work done. They're sending me the video evidence. I can watch it in my own time on my app. Perfect. I've got my employee services app where I can see my pay slip, I can access my EAP, get my shopping offers and discounts, do salary sacrifice, book my holidays, do my rota. And they live side by side on my mobile phone. I don't see a difference between one or the other. That's my remote. I should have checked what was on it, shouldn't I? Radio Allen, for those Partridge fans in the audience. They live side by side. I don't take photographs of it. I don't know what's on it. They live side by side. I don't see a distinction between one and the other. And I think this is maybe the insight that you can take away. You've got the infrastructure. I think we have an audience within our employees, depending on the individual companies. I think we have an audience and a time when we can start to use that infrastructure, use the technology to allow us to deliver engagement programs. So 4 things, I said 3. It isn't about a digital strategy alongside all your other strategies. It's simply embedded into everything that you do. And when you think about it, think of it like yourselves. Think of it like a consumer, like the person who has a Volkswagen car. Don't necessarily design it with your organization in mind. And when you think digital, it's mobile. You can almost substitute one for the other. And you've already got the hard work. You've already got the infrastructure. You're not going to IT asking for money. You're not going for massive development spends. This stuff is available now. Thank you. Am I good?
You're good.
I didn't mean that for feedback.
I don't think we've got a separate mic, so can I share yours?
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask you one quick question before we go? I think we've got 1 minute left. Somebody said, how secure are apps? Are they all the same? What do you look for?
They are. I mean, we had a lot of discussion around security again on our round table. The app itself is simply a method of accessing a series of infrastructures. The way we build them is with fully integrated single sign-on and API links. You aren't going to be 100% secure. There was a show of hands at our table. All the companies, bar one, had experienced some kind of data breach. So I think it's no more or less secure than any other platform which you use.
Thank you. Great. Well, thank you very much, David. That was brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you.